In this video, I will use the Slime Knight from Dragon Quest Monsters as a Pokémon in Emerald. The Slime Knight is an early game monster with average stats across the board, typical of the slime family. Unfortunately, his worst stat is MP, which I'm using as special defense as it isn't a thing in Pokémon games. As a Pokémon, he will have 74 base HP, 95 attack, 84 defense, 74 special attack, 51 special defense, and 80 speed, for a total of 458. These are derived from an average of his GBC stats and 3DS stats, weighted slightly in favor of the former. These are very underwhelming, with nothing over 100, but they are quite similar to single-stage Pokémon in the early gens. His level-up moves are based on his default White Knight or White Fighter skill set in Terry's Wonderland 3D, plus a few other skills just to make him more usable. This is the physical-oriented Zap set, but it doesn't get any AoE slashes like Giga Crosscut in TW3D. I will set up a Slime Knight with a neutral nature, perfect IVs, and pre-applied EVs. He's a fighter in the Slime family, which is the normal type equivalent in DQM games, so I made him a normal and fighting type. This is a terrible combination defensively, but having normal stab is great in these earlier games. He gets the Crafty Banger trait in TW3D, which reduces enemies' bang resistance by 2 stages. This doesn't work in Pokémon, and he only has one bang-based skill, Sacred Slash, so instead I gave him an ability that boosts electric and fighting moves by 20%. This amplifies his fighting stab, but he doesn't get electric stab. Boosted moves are in caps. EV-wise, max attack is forced since his base attack is only average without nature boost, and some special defense is also forced. The rest goes into HP, since he's fast enough as is, and he doesn't need special attack. He levels up at a medium rate in the original DQM games and the remakes, so I put him into the standard 1 million group. This allows him to learn all moves by the Elite Four, without needing to grind. Dazzle Flash doesn't actually do damage in the DQM games, as it's a debuff that halves enemies' accuracy, but here I made it a Psychic-type clone of Icy Wind with 55 power that drops accuracy instead of speed. It's still a terrible move, but good enough for the early game, especially against Roxanne and Brawly. Speaking of Roxanne, I'm a fighting type, so she was no threat. Although I don't have any fighting moves yet, Iron Defense makes it hard for her Pokémon to damage me. By the way, since I patched the ROM with Physical Special Split, Counter and Mirror Coat are no longer based on type, but the actual category of each move. For example, you can now counter Crunch and Fire Punch, but not Shadow Ball or Hyper Beam. Here's an optional rival battle added in Emerald. It's really easy, but it still provides some extra EXP, considering there's nowhere to grind on the island before the next gym. I gave her Torchic just so she won't be burdened with an awful Slugma that never evolves, although Magcargo is arguably even worse. I'm only level 19 and weak to fighting, so Brawly could be a problem. I do have Dazzle Flash, but I don't get stab, and my special attack is too low for it to one-shot anything on his team. I don't have enough HP or defense to rely on counter either. I tried to boost my defense, but his Machop has Seismic Toss that does fixed damage, and since the RNG in these games is deterministic, the AI knows when it's going to roll a critical hit. This is also why accuracy drops don't really work on the AI. Anyway, this fight shouldn't have been that hard, but I got critted by Karate Chop at the start, and my Dazzle Flash missed twice in a row, even though it was supposed to have 95% accuracy. I just had horrible luck, due partly to the quirks of the pseudo-RNG, and once I stopped whiffling my attacks, it was a pretty easy and straightforward win. Helm Splitter is a slash skill that the Slime Knight uses as an enemy in various games, and it has a 50% chance to lower the target's defense. I made it Steel type, and gave it 70 power, like most other slash moves in Pokémon. The opposite character in these Gen 3 games was portrayed as more of a supporter than an actual rival like Green and Silver. There'll never be any challenge unless I edit their teams and AI type, but I really don't want to make changes to the game itself when these videos are just for fun. Watson was a pain without any fighting moves. Although his Magneton has been nerfed in Emerald, it still resists everything I have, and gym leaders have EVs here. All I could do was spam Dazzle Flash and hope for misses, but that didn't work because it has Shockwave, which bypasses accuracy checks. I tried again, hoping for better luck, but it still didn't work due to Paralysis and Shockwave. I didn't want to grind on level 13 wild Pokémon, so I reluctantly learned Rock Smash to deal with the Magneton. Even though the ROM patch has buffed it to 40 power like in Gen 5, and my custom ability gave it 20% extra power, it's still an HM move, meaning I'd be stuck with it all the way until after the 6th gym. Baffling Bonk is a normal attack with a chance to confuse the target, and it's classified as a slash skill, so again, I gave it 70 power for consistency. Also, Zapple is just the tier 2 zap spell with no secondary effects. Flannery was pretty easy, despite my awful special defense. All of her Pokémon were dreadfully slow, and their low levels meant they couldn't really do much without Sunny Day active. The biggest threat in the fight was actually Attract on her Torkoal, but I forgot to set the gender of the Slime Knight, which made me immune to it. Considering my subpar stats, and that this run had already been hard enough as is, I couldn't be bothered to re-edit the ROM just to add in a gender. Norman should have been a free win for a fighting type, but I forgot that his slacking had counter, even though it's caught me off guard once or twice already. Since it has the Truant ability and skips every other turn, all I had to do was equip a Chesto Berry for Yawn, and attack it with Zapple on the first turn. The rest of his team couldn't do a thing, and although his Linoon knows Belly Drum, it can't naturally learn extreme speed in this gen. Stupefying Strike does normal attack damage, with a 50% chance to lower the target's wisdom, and it's also classified as a slash skill. I made it fighting type for stab and the ability boost, and it will be my best move until level 70. The rival battle here is just a joke. You can find higher level Pokémon in the wild. Winona's could technically be an issue in a solo run, since her Swablu knows Perish Song, and she has 5 Pokémon, but it's so slow and fragile that nothing should have any trouble one-shotting it at this point. They could have made this battle a lot more challenging, or rather, annoying, by having her lead with the Skarmory and programming it to always open with Sand Attack, since it's an instant GG if you miss against the Swablu. They could also give it the Bright Powder, just to make it extra annoying. Then again, these games were never designed around solo runs in the first place. I made the Aerial Ace TM compatible, since it's originally a sword technique in Japanese folklore called Swallow Return. I guess they changed the name for the English version due to the character space limit, and they never changed it back in the newer games to avoid confusion. It's a terrible move without the Technician ability, but I just got rid of Rock Smash, so it's still better than nothing. This is the last rival battle, and she still doesn't have a full team or even a fully evolved starter. If she started with Trico or Mudkip, she'd still have an awful Slugma, which isn't even a Gen 3 Pokémon. You have to fight both Team Magma and Team Aqua in Emerald, and Maxie's team here is the same as what he had in Ruby, just at lower levels. Although boss trainers in Emerald do have EVs, Maxie and Archie's teams don't have them maxed out, as the ROM editor only displays the number 150 under their EVs, while gym leaders and the Elite Four can have up to 255. It doesn't show how the EVs are distributed though, nor does it give an option to manually edit them. You need 2 Pokémon to fight the Psychic Gym, so I grabbed an HM Mule as filler. My Psychic weakness didn't play much of a role here, because the AI would always focus down my filler on the first turn, due to the high priority it places on taking KOs. And since I can easily one-shot the Hatu with Sacred Slash, it basically gave me a free turn. I didn't have to worry about the Claydol because it has low offensive stats, and while Stupefying Strike wasn't enough to one-shot the Solrock, it did cut its already terrible special attack. It usually opens with Sunny Day anyway, when it knows it couldn't KO anything on the field. The bigger threat in this battle is the Lunatone, as it knows Hypnosis and Calm Mind, but I equipped a Chesto Berry for that. And since it has much lower defense than Solrock, Stupefying Strike was able to one-shot it. The Claydol on its own couldn't do much, so this was an easy win despite my weakness to Psychic. The Psychic Gym was only a standard double battle, not a multi-battle, despite it having 2 gym leaders, but following it is a forced multi-battle with Steven as your partner. This battle can get pretty obnoxious due to Intimidate and Confusion, which is exacerbated by the horrible partner AI. It's intentional to make the multi-battle modes in the battle frontier artificially harder. This time it was quite easy because I wasn't weak to Earthquake, and the enemies didn't choose to confuse me. Due to his poor stats, I gave the Slime Knight Swords Dance at level 62, just so he would have a better chance at the Elite Four. Otherwise, survival might be tough if I couldn't one-shot the biggest threats. Archie's team here is the same as in Sapphire. They might be a bit stronger due to EVs, but they still only have wild Pokémon's moves, as the dev couldn't be bothered to give them custom movesets. Needless to say, he was a breeze thanks to my advantageous typing and moves. Juan was also a breeze, because his leading Love Disc was just a setup fodder. It has no offensive power whatsoever, and all it can do is try to confuse you, but you have Persim Berries for that. It's a Pokémon that exists solely for the purpose of farming heart scales, or basically an item disguised as a Pokémon. Besides, Water Pulse is such a bad move at this late stage of the game. It only has 60 power, with only a 20% chance to confuse, not to mention confusion is not even a reliable ailment. It's powerful for the second gym, like in Fire Red, but an insulting joke for the last gym. Wally challenges you at the entrance of Victory Road in Emerald, instead of the exit, which makes him easier since you won't be all scuffed up and out of PP. And for some reason, his Pokémon are at even lower levels than Juan's, which is strange for a character that's supposed to act as your real rival. His gimmick is that all of his Pokémon can inflict some kind of ailment or debuff, with the worst being Paralysis and Leech Seed. But again, they are just too underleveled to pose much direct threat. As you can see, his Altaria only did less than a third with Aerial Ace after a Dragon Dance, and it was super effective too. Here are my stats and moves going into the Pokémon League. I have good HP thanks to EVs, but other than that, my only decent stat is attack, and it's barely above average. 140 speed should outrun everything after the 10% boost from badges, which still exists in this gen, so I'm fine there. Moves-wise, my coverage is very limited, and I literally can't hit Sandygast, which thankfully isn't in this gen. I even put strength on my set just for neutral stab, as I simply don't have anything better. Sacred Sword is supposed to bypass stat changes on the target, positive or negative, but that can't be replicated here, so I just made it a stronger clone of Brick Break that shatters screens instead. Sydney was easy as I have stab and boosted Sacred Sword, and all of his team are very fragile, typical of Gen 3 Pokémon. Swords Dance was definitely unnecessary despite Intimidate, and I took a sand attack in return, but luckily, I never missed. Like always, Phoebe was the biggest threat in a solo run, due to the move Curse on her leading Dusclops. However, it almost always opens with Protect to drain your PP using its pressure ability, and that gave me a chance to buff my attack with Swords Dance. It presumably has EVs in HP and physical defense, but its level is low, and its base HP is atrocious, so my Sacred Slash at +2 easily one-shotted. The rest of her team couldn't do anything, since there's no Prankster or anything in Gen 3. Again, the Ghost and Ground combination didn't exist yet, or I'd be screwed if she had a Sandygast or its evolution, Palisand or whatever it's called. Glacia has by far the weakest team among the Elite Four, due to the dearth of new ice types in Gen 3. They didn't even bring back any of the old ones like Cloyster, Lapras, and Piloswine. Not that they would have helped her be any challenge, considering I'm a fighting type with boosted moves. Drake could potentially be a problem, as his leading Shelgon likes to use Rock Tomb to cut your speed. Since I have no speed EV, I won't be able to outrun anything else on his team if I get hit, and my poor defensive stats and lack of resistances mean I won't be able to survive a hit from each of them either. Thankfully, his Shelgon opened with Protect, allowing me to set up Swords Dance with my speed still intact. I have Stab normal and fighting moves, so +2 attack was enough to one-shot everything before Intimidate. Even after taking Intimidate from his Salamence, Strength was still within one-hit KO range, suggesting it has no HP or defense EVs. They're likely in special attack and speed, since Dragon was originally special, and it has Flamethrower, as well as Crunch which was also inexplicably special. Yeah, Fangs and Claws used to do magical damage. Just don't even try to make sense of Pokémon logic. Wallace is arguably the worst champion across all generations and games so far. Unless you go in with something like Camerupt or Magcargo, I just don't see how his full team of water types can be much of a challenge, and crap like those probably wouldn't be able to reach him anyway, since Glacia has a Walrein with Surf. Anyway, I had more than enough HP and special defense to take a full power Water Spout from his Whale Lord, so all I had to do was set up Swords Dance on it and proceed to sweep his team with Sacred Slash. He does have a Gyarados, but the AI here isn't sophisticated enough to juggle Intimidators for the debuff. Wallace was so bad because you can still fight the real champion, Steven, afterwards. I equipped a Pecha Berry for Toxic, and used a few rare candies to match the level of his strongest Pokémon, Metagross. All of his Pokémon are physically bulky, and I think they all have max defense EV as well. Having a weakness to flying or steel could be a positive here, because it gives his leading Skarmory a higher chance of attacking instead of using Toxic, as was the case in this battle. However, it has so much physical defense that a boosted Sacred Slash at +2 wasn't able to one-shot it, and it clearly wasn't even in the range. But I know he would heal, so I used this chance to get another Swords Dance in. At +4, I was easily able to one-shot everything on his team with boosted Sacred Sword. The only potential problem was his Claydol, for which I had to use Strength. but its base HP is only 60, and it can't do much damage back. Even if it was allowed to set up Reflect, I made Sacred Sword shatter screens, and the correct Gen 5 version would ignore Reflect anyway. So, in conclusion, the Slime Knight performed surprisingly well in Emerald, despite his subpar stats and early game struggles. I did set him up for success with good moves, but having normal and fighting stab was still invaluable in this gen. Thanks for watching.